From the swamps of Acadiana to the Mississippi Gulf Coast and everywhere in between. From the city where the spirits that haunt the streets at night outnumber those served in its bars and restaurants. Welcome to Paranormal Talk.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Talk with the New Orleans Ghost Hunters. And this is our first show of 2014. We're going to have a couple of good things for you tonight. So I'm your co-host, David.
And I'm your co-host, Mark, and I am very excited to be here tonight. Before we start off anything, I want to say for 2014, I want to thank WGSO, Jeff, and Rudy for giving us the opportunity. We now have the opportunity to come to you on Friday night, which is really exciting for us. They thought it would be appropriate that from here on out, we're going to be kicking off your weekend in New Orleans style. With a good ghost story, we're going to lead you into the weekend. So pour your favorite drink, open your favorite bottle, sit back, and take a ride with us into the paranormal world.
Also, for 2014, we're going to be trying something new. We're recording our show here in the studio, and we're going to be putting it on YouTube. So not only will you be able to hear us in the studio, you will be able to watch us and see how we actually do things. But tonight, what are we going to be talking about?
I think we're traveling tonight. Well, tonight we're traveling many places. We're traveling many places in the world, and we're going to be traveling out to the stars for the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case.
That's right. We tried to talk about that last week, but we just didn't have enough time, and we're going to be talking about it tonight. I know you have a lot of notes. But I'd like to start off first with, last week we had a regular caller call in, and Brian, and he was asking me about a plane crash that happened back in the 60s in Lake Pontchartrain. And they never found a plane. Well, actually, Brian, if you're listening, I did some research, and this is what I found out. On February 25th, 1964, an Eastern Airlines Flight 304, which was a Douglas DC-8, crashed in Lake Pontchartrain, and it was 58 people on board, 51 passengers and 7 crew members. 60% of the plane was found, and here's what happened. The plane came in from Mexico City. It landed at the time it was called Moysian Airport before it became Louis Armstrong Airport. Mm-hmm. Some people got on, some people got off, and the plane left on its way to Atlanta, where it was then going to go to Washington, D.C., then New York City. The plane took off at approximately 2:01 a.m. A few minutes later, air traffic control called the pilot and told him to turn northeast to avoid some heavy thunderclouds. And he replied nonchalantly, okay. He confirmed that he received a signal. At approximately 2:09, the plane disappeared from the radar. So Coast Guard went out. They were searching to see what they could find. And right before daybreak, they did find debris of the aircraft. They found part of the wing. They found parts of bodies. They found parts of luggage and some papers. 60% of the plane was found. No survivors. You just found bits and pieces. So the parts of the plane was actually found. And what they believe happened was there's a part on the plane called a trim compensator. And they think it was about 15 to 16,000 feet. He hit some turbulence, and somehow or another this trim compensator came into play. And the accident report is really not clear. So you don't know if he was going to a slight dive, was unaware of it, or if he actually, was going straight down. But the report makes no mention of him claiming Mayday, nor was he claiming an emergency. So to me, I think that they were unaware of it, and they just flew right into the lake. So, Darren, you ready?
He's been our producer here, Daryl, is writing something on the board. We have somebody. What else you got there? You ready? Okay, we should have some intro music here in a second. And here it comes. I'm looking at it. And if you're listening to the show, she knows exactly what this is. She's laughing right now. We can see it because we got her on video. This is famous international now out there, and our international correspondent, Chris Colster. Are you there, Chris?
I am. Thank you for having me and for that wonderful intro music.
You like that? How's our volume on there? Can you hear? We're just checking your volume. So, we take it you're now in Italy, right?
Yes, I'm in Urbania, Italy, and I apologize. I have a cold, so I sound a little throaty.
Well, you know, it's going around. A lot of people are sick.
Well, yes, but that's here in Louisiana. She's over in Italy. That's a great distance. So what's the common remedy for the cold over there? Over here we have chicken noodle soup. What do you got over there?
It's a lot of pasta, which I'm complimenting with tea and honey.
It's Italy. You're going to be eating pasta.
I could have told you before you went. There's going to be a lot of like tomato gravies and
eat two meatballs every 4 hours.
So when did you get over there?
I got here 2 days ago.
2 days ago. Were you sick when you left Austria, or
Yes.
you might have got too close to that portal in the Alps?
That might have been it. That was probably it.
So what have you done in Italy so far?
Well, the day after I got here, their La Befana festival started, and it's really getting in full swing now. It's a week-long festival that they have about a witch who delivers candy to children from January 2nd to the 6th down here.
So that's, what, like a 2-week festival almost?
1 week.
1 week festival? Yeah, my math is all bad right now. So what does this witch look like? Is there a description? She a Wizard of Oz witch, or?
She kind of looks like an old woman with a broomstick, which is what she's supposed to look like. She represents just your typical old woman who does nice things for kids, delivers candy. So the streets down here are filled with kind of scarecrows of old witches and paintings of witches in the windows, and there are stockings hanging from all the buildings because she gives candy to kids in stockings, just like Santa does on Christmas Eve back in the U.S.
So she's no relation to the witch over here that tried to eat Hansel and Gretel.
No.
She's completely different, right?
Yeah, she's a good witch.
David, you got questions?
Well, not a question, but I believe you have a story for us about some mummies.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us about that, our international correspondent?
Okay. In addition to the La Befana Festival, anybody in Urbania should definitely check out the Church of the Dead, because it has what's called the Cemetery of the Mummies. And within the church, there are all these mummies from the 17th and 18th century that were buried in the same area as a specific type of mushroom that actually naturally preserved the bodies. So you can see about 12 to 15 mummies on display and go on a tour for only €2 about why the mummies are still in such good condition.
Really? There's a saint over there that's supposed to be in really good condition. Is that St. John Bosco, or I don't know if you're up on what the Catholics do over here. But I know that one of the former popes or something like that
is supposed to be in that church?
I don't know if you know, but the body's still in great condition. Like you're talking about the mummies down there, why the bodies are mummified and why they look so good. Maybe when you get down to the Vatican, you can tell me who that was.
You were obsessed with the Vatican.
Well, I'm not going to tell.
The second week you brought it up.
Well, yes, that's right.
Well, Italy is known for the Vatican.
That's true.
I'm also, you know what I would love to do? I would love to do an EVP session in the Coliseum.
You know, that's not a bad idea. That's not a bad...
I shouldn't have said that on the air, because somebody's going to do that.
Chris, have you been to... I know you've traveled the world. Have you been to the Coliseum?
Yes, 2 years ago.
So,
but
I mean...
I didn't do any EVP readings.
Well, can anybody just walk in there, or do you have to have a ticket? I mean, do they restrict the times? How's the public access to it?
You have to pay to get in, but anybody can get in.
And you can walk all over the place?
Not all over the place. You can't go to the lower level where they used to actually keep people and where people used to fight.
Okay.
What would happen if me and David walked into the Coliseum and then we pulled out big Nerf swords and started beating on each other?
That would be awesome.
Would that not be awesome? Like, you know, of course, we got 30 seconds left. You got anything you want to bring us from Italy to be looking forward to, or?
Just if anybody has been feeling the need to come to Italy, come now during the festival, because Urbania is just gorgeous. There are witches on every street corner down here now.
Of course, man. I wish we could send you some chicken noodle soup, but take care and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be back. If you got questions for the show, please give us a call at 504-556-9696.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life.
And welcome back to Paranormal Talk with the New Orleans Ghost Hunters. So if you're in a local listening audience, you can give us a call at 504-556-9696 if you'd like to be on our show. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, I ask that you please call in on Friday evenings between 7 and 8 p.m. Central Time, or you might be calling some of the other shows here on the station. So, last week we tried to talk about this, but we didn't have enough time. It's a very, very good story. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about it?
I'm glad you said that. It's a very, very good story because that's what it is. We're going to talk about the 1961 Betty and Barney Hill abduction case.
Now, for those out there listening, one thing you should know about us, that even though we're ghost hunters, we're very, very skeptical about a lot of stuff, and we try to bring you both sides of the story and not to believe everything that you see and hear. Oh, not that you say, but everything that you're told or you read or whatever. So we like to present you with the facts and let you come up with your own conclusions. So let's get on with the Barney and Betty Hill abduction story.
This occurred September 19th, September the 20th of 1961 is the date that the alleged abduction occurred. Now, the reason this is important is because this was the first time in the United States, the continental United States, that people actually claimed to be abducted by aliens. Was able to tell what the craft looked like, describe the occupants, describe the physical examinations they went through, went under hypnosis. Tremendous thing. There was a book written about it called An Interrupted Journey, and then there was a movie made about it in 1971 called The UFO Incident, in which James Earl Jones played the part of Barney Hill. Now, this occurred in New Hampshire, and Betty had graduated from, let me make sure I get this right, occurred in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and there is a marker on the side of the road of where the alleged abduction was supposedly happened.
I read that, and I can't believe they actually put up a historical marker to mark that location. I thought it would be reserved for something a little more historical.
The University of Massachusetts, University of New Hampshire, where she went to school, they have a permanent collection of her works in the library there. So you have an institution and you have a state saying, hey, this is important.
Tourism.
It's a great story. And I can tell you the story, but here's the thing. A story, you get everything kind of messed up. I can put things in different order. I can put the middle in the front, and I can leave out what I want. So the way we're going to look at this event tonight is I've broken it down into 18 separate events of how things occurred chronologically. We're going to look at what happened during those events and then how things changed over time. So that way we're not getting convoluted at end results being claimed that they occurred in the beginning. You'll see as the story starts to go on. David, at any time you got any questions, just let me know. Okay, it's September 19th, 1961. Betty and Barney Hill are married. Betty is about 39 years old. He works for the U.S. Postal Service. Betty is 42. She's a social worker. Very uncommon for the back then. They're an interracial couple. Barney is a black male. Betty is a white female. And they're involved with the NAACP. They're involved with social organizations and all that. They've been up to Niagara Falls, where they're recovering from, where Barney's recovering from ulcer, some problems he was having. They're on their way back home, and event number one happens south of Lancaster, New Hampshire. And Betty sees a bright point of light move from below the moon and below the planet Jupiter, but it moves westward, upward, and it moves west across the moon. So she's thinking it's a shooting star. But shooting stars don't usually move up in the sky. You can't see them moving across the moon. So she's just thinking that. We're going to go to event number two. The shooting star just starts to move erratically. And Betty asks Barney to stop. They got to walk their dog, Dulcie. And she wants to get a better look at what's going on in the sky. So they stop at a picnic area called Twin Mountain, or near Twin Mountains. And Betty picks up a pair of binoculars, and she looks at the craft, and she describes it as odd-shaped craft with flashing multicolored lights that moves across the moon. Barney takes the binoculars from him, and he looks at it, but he thinks it's a plane. But all of a sudden, the plane starts moving towards him, and he thinks this is kind of odd, so he gets in the car and he drives away. Event number 3 that night occurs near Franconia Notch. The craft this whole time is continuing to get closer to them. It flies over a restaurant and over Cannon Mountain. Betty describes it as a silent, rotating, and illuminating. And the craft appears to be playing a game of cat and mouse with them. It'll appear for a while, it'll disappear, then it'll appear behind them or on the side of them. It's like it's playing with them. Event number 4 occurs in Indian Head, where Barney's had enough. He wants to stop and get a better look. So at this time, the flying craft moves in front of his vehicle to about 80 feet above them and stops while they're on the road. Barney stops in the middle of the road trying to figure out what's going on, and he gets out with the binoculars for a better look. Now, this is Barney later on described he saw a saucer-shaped double row of lights. He saw a saucer-shaped object with a row of double lights with blue white light illuminating through the windows. The craft glides to the left and hovers over a field. Barney goes into the field, gets to about 50 feet of the object, still using binoculars to look at it. And he sees beings in the window looking at him, and one continues to stare at him while the others move towards a panel on the rear wall. One of them pulls a lever, some rain shoot out of the craft, and something starts to come out of the bottom. Well, Barney says he feels like he's frozen, like they're taking over his mind, and he's telling himself, I got to get away, I got to get away. He finally breaks the spell that he's under, runs back to the car, tells Betty they're going to get us. They're coming to get us. And they drive off. They're going down the road, which I think I'm going into event number 5. No. They're going down the road when they start to hear a series of whirls and pops, and the vehicle starts to vibrate. It's the last thing they remember. Event number 5 is their next memory, which is 20 to 30 miles outside of Indian Head. So they drove 20 to 30 miles without any knowledge of it at all. They still hear beeps and whirls coming from the trunk, but the car has now stopped vibrating, and they see a red fiery orb in the road, but they begin to have a conversation. They never say what the conversation is about, but they just begin to have one. Event number 6, they arrive home at 5:30 that morning instead of the scheduled 3:30. So for some reason, the trip took 2 hours longer than it was supposed to. But several things arrive when they come home. The binocular strap is broken. They don't know how. Both of their watches are broken, and they will never work again. Betty's dress is torn at the hem, the zipper, and the lining, and she has a pink powder on it that blows away when she puts it on a clothesline. Barney was wearing a pair of his best shoes. They're scuffed at the toes. He has no idea how that happens. Barney feels this need to check his genital area. Goes take a bath and all that. And then they find 12 to 18 silver dollar-sized circles on the trunk of their vehicle. They place a compass by them, and when they place the compass over the whirls, the compass spins wildly. When they move away, the compass stops spinning and goes back to normal. Event number 7. Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of what happens. Event number 7 occurs September 21st, 1961, the day after they see it. Betty calls Peace Air Force Base to report the incident. And on September the 22nd, she is contacted by Major Paul W. Henderson. September 26th, Major Henderson writes an official report that says they probably misidentified the planet Jupiter. September the 26th, 1961 is when things kick off. Betty contacts retired Marine Corps Major Donald Kehoe, who investigates UFOs, and tells them about the events. Tells them about that she would like to be hypnotized. And when we come back, because we're up against the break, we're going to talk about what happened during those hypnotic sessions and what happened. If you got any questions, give us a call at 556-9696. I was thinking too far ahead. And we'd like to give a special thanks to Blue Bonnet Dental Care for their support of the show and WGSO. You know, one has to wonder when the alien went to the back of the ship and pulled the lever down and the wings started to come out, if that's the sound that Barney Hill heard coming from the spacecraft.
Well, I do have a question.
Yes.
You said he used a lever.
He walked to the back of the ship and pulled down a lever.
Now, this is alien technology that's so far advanced that they travel by anti-gravity or whatever, and he used a lever.
Yeah, look, they haven't figured out buttons yet.
Okay.
Buttons much
lever.
believe them.
Also, you mentioned that the craft hovered 50 feet away from him?
Well, the craft stopped 80 feet away from him. He got out when it was about 50 feet away, took the binoculars to get a closer look.
Who looks at something 50 to 80 feet away with a pair of binoculars?
You know, that's what I was thinking when I was reading that. Like, you know, you go to a football game, you're sitting in the terrace, you want to see the game close, you look at binoculars. But there is no time in my life I've ever looked from the front in Mom and Dad's house through a pair of binoculars to see what was going on in the driveway.
No, if that guy's eyes were that bad, you have to question the story about what he actually saw that night.
Well, I mean, you're looking at 50 feet. At 50 feet, anything you look at through binoculars is just going to be a big blur.
Well, he might not saw the whole craft. He might have saw a part of the craft, but not the whole craft.
And that's probably why you could see the guy pulling the lever, while the other one was smiling at him.
Probably so.
So, anyway, September 21st, the day after the event occurs, she calls Peace Air Force Base. September 26th, the same day that Major Henderson gives his report, she calls up retired Major Donald Kehoe, who leads NICAP, which is a civilian research group on UFOs. She says, hey, I read your book. We think we've been abducted. We're willing to undergo hypnosis. Now, October 1st, 5 days later, Betty begins to have vivid dreams for 5 nights straight about being captured by aliens. 5 nights straight, she has the same dream, most vivid dream she's ever had in her life. And I'll get into a little bit of her dream later on. October 21st, 1961, Walter Webb, an astronomer and member of NICAP, interviews both of them. He interviews them for 6 hours, and he feels that, hey, they got to be telling the truth. This must really happen. But he says he believes that Benny has a mental block because he does not want to remember what happened. Because the whole time, Barney's kind of like, well, you know, yeah, whatever. And Barney describes the craft and beings as being somehow not human, resembling humans, but not humans. Let's talk a little bit about, November 1961, Betty starts to write down the dreams that she had in October. So now I'm going to tell you what Betty's dream was. She dreams that she and Barney encounter a roadblock where several men surround the car. She loses consciousness, but later regains it as she's being forced to walk through the forest by 2 small men. Barney is following them. She described the men as short, 5 to 5 feet 4 inches in height, wearing matching military-style uniforms with a cap, black hair, and a Jimmy Durante-type nose. So those of you who don't know, Jimmy Durante was known for his enormous nose. They walk into a disc-shaped craft. She does not want to go, but they tell her that the longer she waits on the outside, the longer it's going to take them. So pretty much get in there and let's get this over with. They bring Barney to a separate room, and she starts complaining, why are you separating me from Barney? And he's like, well, we only have room on, each room can only examine one person. If we got to examine you both in here, it's going to take longer. We got to do it this way. So she says, okay.
They were talking to her in English?
Yes. But that was the leader. Now, an examiner walks into the room, but he cannot speak English as well as the leader, so she has trouble understanding him. He takes off her dress, and he takes a hair, a skin, and fingernail samples, and he checks her ears, nose, and throat. I guess he's a general practitioner. He tells her he wants to test her nervous system to see how they're different than they are. And he does this with a bunch of needles attached to wires that he pricks her with. He then takes a very large needle and inserts it into her navel. She claims that this is extremely painful, but that the leader waves his hand over her face and the pain goes away. They tell her it's a pregnancy test. The examiner leaves and she begins a conversation with the leader. She tells him that she needs proof that this happened. And he tells her, well, I'll tell you what, Barney's still getting investigated. Take a look around the ship, see if there's something you would like to take. So she looks around the ship and she finds a book. And she says, hey, can I have this book? It's got vertical writing on it. I can't make it out, but I'd like to have it. He says, yeah, sure, go ahead, take it.
A book?
Yeah, a book.
So these beings coming from outer space with all this technology, they have a book on board. They don't have computers. Notice it didn't describe computers.
No,
it was a book.
It's not a Kindle either. It was a book.
It was a book.
With flipping pages. Levers and books in spaceships. I need to write a book called Levers and Ships and Spacecraft. Levers and Books and Spaceships. She asks where he is from, and he shows her a map with dots and lines. The dots are stars, and the lines are trade or expeditionary routes. She can't understand the map, and it makes no sense. He says, since you can't understand the map, it makes no sense for me to tell you where we're from. When they are leaving, the other aliens confront the leader, and they say, hey, you can't let her walk out of here with this book.
So wait, their navigation is a map that's got stars and lines connected to them?
Yes.
That's their navigation system?
Yes.
Okay. Here we are in 2014, and we have something a little more elaborate called GPS.
Yes.
Okay.
You're starting to notice some problems in this case?
Yes, it's all 1960s technology.
Yes. When they're leaving, the aliens confront her, and the aliens confront the leader and say, you can't let her take that book. So he says, no, I can't let you take the book. She gets really angry, and she starts telling him that she needs proof or that no one will believe her. November 25th, that's Betty's dream. November 25th, 1961, they're interviewed by NICAP, and the subject of missing time comes up, and hypnosis is brought up again. Betty wants to do it, but Barney does not. He thinks he might do it just to help Betty out. Event number 12, March 3rd, 1963. 1.5 years later, Betty and Barney talk to their church for the first time publicly about the incident, when Barney is seeing a psychologist during this time. November 3rd, 1961, Betty speak to a UFO amateur group. And then event number 14, December 14th, 1963. Over 2 years after the events start, they meet a Dr. Simon, the hypnotist, on January 14th, 1964, to begin to hypnotize Barney and Betty and have them talk about the event. These sessions will last all the way till June 6, 1964. Barney is the first to be hypnotized. I apologize. I keep getting the names messed up. I have actually listened to some of the tapes that were recorded. And you really do, if you get a chance to listen to the tapes, you need to listen to them. How much longer we got before we're up against the break? 3 minutes. I got enough time. This is Barney's description. After he undergoes hypnosis, this is what Barney describes. He says he felt, this is all in hypnosis now, he felt compelled to pull off into the woods. He sees 6 men blocking the road, and 3 come to him while the other 3 go to his wife. He did not hear them speak English, but they spoke some type of jumbled language. He didn't see their mouths move when they spoke, but they spoke with him telepathically. He described the beings as being movement moved with the cold precision of German officers. He described them as Nazis. They showed no emotion. Their clothes were a shiny black leather-like uniform with hats, kind of like an SS uniform with shiny black instead of black leather. Now, the leader is taller than all the other ones, and he wears a scarf, I guess like the Red Baron. He described them as German Nazis. Now, when he takes them onto the board, what people don't talk about nowadays is when he gets on board, initially Barney said there was a red-headed Irishman on the craft. And he leaves this out because he has a feeling that the red-headed Irishman does not like black people. That was in the hypnotic tapes. He refers to their eyes, like those eyes. They're pressing into his. He's afraid. He says most of the time he keeps his eyes closed because he doesn't want to see what's going on. They place him on a table for examination. They insert a tube into him, and they place a couple of those genitals to take a sample. He was then escorted back out of the craft into the car. And in later accounts, only the leader wears black leather, but the others are now wearing denim. I guess like a U-boat crew now. You know, I just thought about that. It's kind of black leather and then denim. I wonder if they saw a submarine movie or something like that.
No, but what I do have an interesting point I'm going to bring up after the break. that kind of fits in what's going on here.
Betty's hypnotic sessions, identical to her dreams, which occurred, and she wrote down 2 years earlier. The slight difference in the capture and release, and the map is now more three-dimensional. And the tech of the craft is slightly different, but not much. Doctor tells her to sketch the map that he showed her, which will later become the star map. And when we come back for our last segment, we're going to wrap it all up because we're almost going to explain and everything. We're going to get into what we see are conflicts. If you got any questions, give us a call at 504-556-9696. And we will see you back right after the break.
And welcome back to Paranormal Talk with the New Orleans Ghost Hunters. And, during the station break, I was looking up something here on the computer, and something you said rang a bell, and that's why I looked it up. The 1962 television episode of The Twilight Zone featured To Serve Man, which was based on a 1950 short story. And do you know what that episode encompassed? An alien from outer space in a spaceship with a book. To serve man. And guess how he was dressed?
How was he dressed?
In a black leather jumpsuit.
Was he shiny? I'm looking at a picture.
It's hard to see here. I mean, it was black and white.
But it is one of those what you would expect 1960 spaceman suits.
Well, yeah, I mean,
like.
he's got like a black suit here. But I mean, it seems like everything we're hearing fits in what you see on television.
Well, that is a perfect segment into event number 15. Event number 15 occurs on February the 10th, 1964. This is a month after they started their hypnosis. So, February 10th, 1964, an episode of The Outer Limits airs on TV. This episode is called The Bolero Shield. In it, the aliens have large, bald heads, gray skin, and large wraparound eyes they're kind of like the classic eyes when we think of aliens now. This leads us to event number 16, February 22nd, 1964, 12 days after the Bolero Shield airs. Barney undergoes another hypnotic session. This time, the appearance of the beings change. He now describes them as not wearing any clothes at all. They're skinny with large bald heads, gray skin, and huge black wraparound eyes. There's a line in that movie, or that program, that says, in all the universes beyond the universe, all who have eyes that speak. Now remember, for the rest of Barney's hypnosis, he always talks about the eyes speak to him, the eyes talk to him. Now, something people don't know. Betty was allowed to listen to Barney's hypnotic sessions. They say they weren't, she was. After she listens to Benny's hypnotic sessions, guess what happens?
She changes her story.
Betty hears the session. In her subsequent sessions, the beings are now described the way that Barney has described them on February 22nd.
So we're feeding
they're no longer Nazis. They're no longer wearing black uniforms. They no longer have scarves. They're now the aliens that we're seeing in that. The star map, when the doctor asked her to draw something, she drew 12 lines. I'm not even going to get into that. We got too much to cover. Dr. Simon's report. Dr. Simon says the recollection of the UFO experience is nothing more than a fantasy that was inspired by Betty's dream. That is what the doctor said. But for years and years and years, UFO people, or people who want to say that UFOs are really out there, they've based their entire their entire events on something that. David, would you like to go through the list of questions that we have? But we just told us we got 10 minutes. Let's go for it.
Well, whatever happened to Delsey? Did they say anything that happened to Delsey, the dog? Was he also abducted also? Did he examine the poor little dog?
They never do. But before we hit the questions, corroborating evidence on the abduction, you might ask? There was. Peace Air Force Base, 82 miles southeast of Indian Point Hill at 2:14 a.m., they get a radar hit. That night. North Concord Air Base, 40 miles south of Indian Head, they have a radar contact at 5:22 p.m. on the 19th. 130 miles away, they have a contact at 2:14 a.m. 7 hours difference before, and then the hailstorm occurs during that time. What it is there was a weather balloon in the area.
Oh,
that's why they describe it
like Roswell.
Right.
Now, what about the dust, the pink dust or powder that was on her dress? It was supposedly analyzed by several laboratories. What were the findings?
Inconclusive. But here's I got a question on this, David. She waits one day to call up the Air Force because she doesn't want credibility. She doesn't want publicity. She waits one day, okay? But yet she waits 40 years to have the dress examined.
40 years?
40 years to have the dress examined. She sits in the closet for 40 years.
Sat in the closet for 40 years?
Something that had physical proof on it.
Okay, she waited, okay, yeah.
Yes. Now, Barney died young. He died in 1969 of a cerebral hemorrhage. Here's another. Jim McDonald lives in the area where the reported sighting occurred, and he has gone back and traced their routes, and when he found out that an aircraft warning beacon on Cannon Mountain is an object they claim was a UFO. From the road they were on, the beacon appears and disappears at the exact same time in the journey that the Hills claim the UFO did.
Now, didn't she identify that light or a street light as something?
In 1977, they went on a UFO vigil. They took her out on a UFO vigil where she was unable to tell the difference between a UFO and a street light.
Okay.
In 1980, she went on stage in New York for a conference, and she showed over 200 pictures of lights, blips, and blurs that were, she claimed, were UFOs chasing a car. She was booed off stage. In 1995, she wrote a book that states that fleets of UFOs and even a truck she's seen a fleet of UFOs and a truck levitating above the freeway. And although she claims she had never had any interest in UFOs before the experience, it has now become known that she was obsessed with UFOs before this, because in 1957 her sister had a sighting time, but she always used to tell people about her sister's encounter.
I thought so. So what we're looking at here is somebody who, a couple who may have been influenced by television shows about aliens. Mm-hmm. They were feeding off of one another, would hear each other's story and then change that story.
What they think, and what I think is, if you've ever lived, I mean, God bless me, I'm lucky, but could you imagine living with a woman who's crazy?
I don't know if she was crazy.
Well, if you live with a woman who for 2 days every year has told you about a dream she had, and told you every day that you were abducted by aliens and this is what happened to you, he probably just might have wanted her to shut up.
Might have.
I mean, it's one of those things where I think if somebody tells you every day for 2 years that you were abducted by aliens and this is what happened, of course. Why is her dreams the exact same as when she was under hypnosis?
Hypnosis, yes.
I brought that. Let me just hit some good points on here. She says she knew nothing about astronomy, but she picked out Jupiter in the night sky. The leader of a secret UFO abduction is going to let her take proof by taking a book. Now, if you listen
to serve man.
If you listen to her hypnotic sessions, when she talks about this event, she starts crying while under hypnosis, saying, "I need proof. I'm so mad at you that you won't give me proof." She was dying. A part of me, from everything I've seen, she was dying to have people think she was abducted by UFOs. I think she wanted to see a UFO. She convinced herself that she saw a UFO. It's kind of like David when we go to a place where everybody thinks they've seen a ghost. They're convinced they're being haunted.
Yeah, we were having some problems with that. People's been contacting us, and they were saying, well, we've had a couple of groups come in, and they haven't found any ghosts, so hopefully you guys will come in and find one. And I'm like, well, that's not what we do. We come in, we find evidence that's there. We don't come in and find ghosts for people. So I think this might be kind of the same situation where, they actually wanted something to happen so bad it became reality.
But that's what bothers me so much. This is what destroys actual UFO research. If you build a house and you start off with putting that brick down in the northeast corner, and then you build the foundation off of that brick, and then you remove that brick, then your whole structure it falls, because everything that you've built it on is a lie.
Well, glad we got into that. So, coming up next week, we're going to be doing the first ever ghost hunt on the radio. So tune in and listen to it. We're going to have something very unique going on. We're going to be doing a live ghost hunt here on WGSO, Paranormal Talk, the New Orleans Ghost Hunters. And also we're going to try to do some segments on haunted Civil War battlefields.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the battlefield. And I think next week let's do one on Cold Harbor, because we told our dad about that one, and he really liked
Well,
that
first we have to
story.
find out if there's any paranormal activity going on at Cold Harbor before we can bring it up.
Well, there's a lot of people that died there. I'm sure something happened. From New Orleans Ghost Hunters, all of us involved, thank you for listening to Paranormal Talk, and we will see you shortly.